I can't imagine the kind of stomach and wretch control this individual has every day, day in, day out. He's going face to face with people who are trying to destroy our Second Amendment rights. And they're doing it for irrational, illogical reasons. But yet he fights that battle. And he's now been doing it for the better part of 20 years, Sam? 20 years? Sacramento?
36.
36, okay? I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And he fights the battle. And he's here tonight to tell us what's going on inside Sacramento. Not what's in the news, but what's inside Sacramento. Please give a warm welcome to a warrior for the Second Amendment, Mr. Sam Paredes, Executive Director, California.
See what I can do with that. Boy, a pulpit. I feel like I'm in church. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. I walked in and I saw that sign up there and I said, why did I expect anything different from this group? You know? The fact of the matter is, has been pointed out a couple of times, if all of the gun owners in California would vote, the world would be different, to say the least. The low estimates are that there are maybe 11 million gun owners in California out of 40 million people. The real numbers are probably significantly higher than that. Can you imagine if we had 11 million voters who voted on the Second Amendment? We could elect every dog catcher, every city councilman, every school board member, every member of the state legislature, the governor, the treasurer, all of the constitutional offices. We could do that. And it is a very simple thing to achieve that. It's not easy, but it's simple. I've been working with some of the guys at CRPA, and we've come up with a plan. It's called 5 Degrees to Domination. And this is how simple it is. You folks are familiar with Amway or Shackley or any of the multi-level marketing business proposals that are out there. And you know what? Some people achieve great heights and great wealth by putting that plan together. We have a similar plan. If we could get one person to register to vote, doesn't matter what party, and commit to voting pro-gun, and we get that person to identify 10 friends and get them to register to vote if they're not registered, but get them to commit to voting pro-gun, and teach them how to go out and each of them get 10 friends. And they teach those people how to get 10 friends, and those people teach their friends to get 10 friends 5 times, and we have 1 million pro-gun voters. I said 11 million gun owners. With 1 million pro-gun voters, we can elect every dog catcher, every sheriff, and we could do amazing things in California. Now, that seems like a tough task. Who's gonna be the one to start that? But what would happen if we got 1,000 people to buy into this and they get 10 friends? And they commit to go out and getting 10 friends. One person doesn't have to do it all by themselves. Together, we can achieve that if we really want to put this simple plan into play. It's not easy, like I said. Getting people to vote is a difficult task. They're under the misconception that, oh, I don't want to go on jury duty. Well, you know, if you have a driver's license, you're eligible to be called on jury duty. There are multiple lists that they use in order to identify people, to invite them to exercise their citizens' responsibilities. So that's not an excuse. Talk to them and say, hey, how do you feel about the guns in your closet being declared illegal? Or the magazines in your closet being declared illegal? Or the ammunition that you have to go and buy is now going to cost you 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times more than you're paying now? How do you feel about that? What do you think the response is going to be, even if they're casual shooters? Well, heck, that's not a good deal. And what would you think if the people who are going to do that to you refuse to do anything to get at the criminal element or the criminal misuse of firearms? As a matter of fact, they are working very diligently to get people who have been tried and convicted for criminal acts with firearms and getting them released. What do you think your friend would say when you share that with them? They say, boy, that's really not right. What can I do to help? That's how you encourage them to participate. Where do I get the information? Well, heck, all of this information is available on your computer, on your laptop, on your pad, whatever kind you have, or your cell phones. Right now, 70% of the population in California gets all of their news and does all of their computing on their phone. Can you believe that? You know. I know all the time. I go to church and I see everybody going. Of course, when I'm doing that, it's because I have my Bible on my phone.
Yep.
I do, in 37 different versions. It's kind of fun. It's a simple thing for us to do. It's not easy. We just have to be committed to putting this plan into place. The people that are running the show in Sacramento, they are not our friends. Let me tell you what the chairman of the Assembly Public Safety Committee said to us, and in particular in response to testimony that I gave. When I testified that the bill that they were hearing, was unconstitutional. So they went ahead and gave their side 2 minutes for two people, and our side 2 minutes for two people. So a grand total of 8 minutes were used to debate the issue or present testimony on this bill. And I was not one of the main testifiers, so I just said, hi, my name is Sam Paredes, I represent gun owners in California, and this bill is unconstitutional, just before he gavelled me down. And what happened was, they allowed the author to say his close on the bill and to wax eloquently and to answer the questions that we brought up in our testimony, all 4 minutes. And then the chairman has the opportunity to close this hearing on this particular bill. Chairman, Assemblyman Reginald Jones Sawyer says, regarding the constitutionality of this bill, he said, well, you know, this legislature, we do what we want because we are California. We do things anyway. We don't care about the Constitution. That is the mentality, not of your, well, it is to your average member, but of the leadership, those people who stand to lead the committees that affect all issues on crime and our gun rights.
You wouldn't have to have that on tape, would you?
There is a tape of it that we're trying to get a hold of. We have printed it, it has gone on the internet, it has gone all over the place. And then this this assemblyman, in a subsequent press conference, says that, you know what, regarding the Second Amendment, written in 1871, it's kind of old, and passed in 71. We're not facing a tyrannical government anymore. We don't need it. We don't need it. We're not facing a tyrannical government. Obviously, they don't know the definition of tyranny. I am personally.
They're liars. They're flat liars.
Okay. That is what we're facing. We, except in very few cases when we get really sneaky and all the stars and planets line up, do we get an opportunity to kill anti-Second Amendment legislation in the legislature in either house? Why? Because those people that make up the majority, they're not elected because they are pliable in their philosophy, willing to listen and be objective. They are elected, they are groomed by the leadership and given the opportunity to come and fill a seat in one of these august chambers because they are solid in their philosophy and they can be counted on. Now, sometimes they make decisions. We have to get somebody that's a little bit softer in some of these districts if we want a D to represent the district, so they can be like 3/4 pro-gun. But if there's a doggone vote that we need them on, they're going to vote our way or they're not going to be there next time. But as long as their pro-gun vote doesn't affect us winning, we'll go ahead and do that. So being that we rarely change their minds because they stack the committees against us, both the Senate Public Safety Committee and the Assembly Public Safety Committee, the Democrat majority, like in the Senate, it's 5-2, and the Assembly, it's 5 or 6-2. They stack that committee with the most ardent, not even, I hate to denigrate the term liberal by calling them liberal, but radical members of the legislature who they believe cannot be defeated in their election if Abraham Lincoln was running against them. If Jesus Christ were running against them, they feel safe that they would win that election. Now, since we can't change the minds except on very rare occasions when we pull off a really sneaky thing, because we know the rules, we know the schedules, we pay attention to what's going on in the individual lives of members of the legislature. Like 2 years ago when we were able to kill a bill because one of the members, his wife was deathly ill in Los Angeles, and we knew that he was ferrying back and forth. And on the last day of session, the day before the last day of session, he was on the floor. They voted this anti-gun bill out. But if you know the rules in the Senate and the Assembly and that they are slightly different, you can actually ask for a reconsideration on a winning vote. So we talked to one of our friends. He asked for reconsideration. Under the rules of the House, they had to grant it. That means that they couldn't vote on it again that day. They had to wait for the next day, which was the last day of session. And we were on bended knee hoping that this member might have to go visit his wife. And sure enough, he did. This vote passed by 1 vote. It was actually the vote to ban gun shows at the Cow Palace. So on the last day, when they brought up the vote, this member wasn't there. The author, Senator Leno, was apoplectic because he didn't have the votes. And they were calling the senator's on his way. He's on a flight back to Sacramento. And my job was to go out and stand in front of this member's office door and say, hey, Senator, I know you voted against the Second Amendment your entire career, but let me share this with you. This is your last term. This is your last day as a state senator. And Senator Leno, as a chairman of the Appropriations Committee, killed your last premier bill that you wanted to use as the capstone of your career. He was really into horse racing. So he had a bill to help the horse racing industry. And I was prepared to have a chat with him and say, Senator, why would you want to vote on his premier bill when he crushed your premier bill? Thank the good Lord. He never came out of the office. I didn't have to spend that conversation. He didn't show up. Gavel went down. Bill lost. 15 minutes later, the senator arrived, comes in and says, what's going on? Is it all done? Is it over? They said, everything's done. But it was only because we were there and we understood the rules. Now, we couldn't do the same rule tactic in the Assembly because they will not allow a reconsideration of a bill that passes with a majority vote. All that to say, that except in very rare occasions, we don't defeat legislation in Sacramento. Since we can't defeat it, our only other option is to change the people because we can't change the minds. Hence, register to vote, register, or register to buy ammo. And the way to prevent that is by getting other people to register to vote and committing to voting pro gun. I said earlier, there's a lot of information available. Go to the Gun Owners of California website. If you don't know gunownersca.com, Google Gun Owners of California. We come up, we've got a list of where all the candidates stand on the Second Amendment. Those that responded to our questionnaires, we give them a grade. Every member of the incumbent, we give them a grade not on the sheet, the information they give us in a questionnaire, but on their track record. So they cannot escape what they have done. And we list all that information there. And then you'll find that there are a lot of blanks, candidates that did not respond to questionnaire. And we believe that if a candidate is not willing to respond to a questionnaire about their position on the Second Amendment, we should be suspect. And we are. Forgive me if we're paranoid, but they really are trying to get us. That information is there. NRA, CRPA, the first one out the chute was Firearms Policy Coalition with a rating for all of the incumbents. We followed that up with all of the incumbents and all of the candidates. NRA and CRPA has that information available for everybody running for the state assembly, everybody running for the state senate. There is no excuse. Those are the important races we have to be concentrating on with a mass number of votes in order to change the knuckleheads under the dome. And if we do that, Loma Prieta will be, a little shake, a little tremble compared to what will happen. If we defeat 1, 2, or 3 sitting, known anti-gun people over there, it will send shockwaves through that legislature like nobody's business. Because the number one thing that any politician, their number one goal above anything is, I don't want to lose my job. What do I have to do to remain elected and look for the next job? Number one. So if we are successful in taking out a few of those, and I mean that in the electoral sense, if we're successful, there will be whining that you will be able to hear from Half Moon Bay to Mission Bay to Emerald Bay in Lake Tahoe and up and down the state. Because there will be a lot of anti-gun members who will go to those members who continue to sponsor anti-gun legislation and say, don't you sponsor another bill, because if they took Joe out or Shirley out, they can take me out. And it'll be your fault, and we will hold you responsible. That's a beautiful thing. That's being scared. And that is a beautiful thing. So that's what we're going to be focusing on this election. Is this election important this year?
Yes.
Boy, howdy. We lost a lion in Justice Scalia. We lost one of the top defenders, I would argue, the top defender of the Second Amendment in the country, based on his philosophy and his position to be able to influence the entire country about what the Second Amendment meant. We lost him. We have an open seat. Very interesting things have happened, though. Only 8 members of the Supreme Court right now. Very recently, there was a per curiam ruling that came out. That means it was unanimous, without testimony required. And this was in a case where a lady was arrested for using a taser. Tasers were banned in her state. And she said, I used it under my Second Amendment rights. And the state, the local court and the intermediate courts, they said, no, a taser doesn't qualify under the Second Amendment. Well, the per curiam ruling came back, owned by law-abiding citizens, qualifies under the Second Amendment. Now, why they did it that way, there's a lot of speculation, because in doing that, they didn't give us enough time to brief the case and add a lot of body as to what that meant. So we don't know what all that means, and there's question whether that has the weight of precedent. They actually took the case, sent it back down to the district court and said, nope, you can't do it this way. It's got to be strict scrutiny that you re-evaluate this case and bring it back up the ladder. Well, by saying that they have to use strict scrutiny, the case will be overturned by definition. Beautiful thing. And we've got a whole lot of other lawsuits that are going on. People are saying, Sam, why don't you guys file lawsuits here in California against safe handguns and assault weapons, magazine bans, and yeah, you know, loaded chamber indicators, magazine disconnects, you name it. Well, actually, there are lawsuits, including microstamping, on all of those issues, making their way through the process, most of them in other states, where we have a good case with a good court that will make its way up and get before the Supreme Court, which is the goal. Because the Ninth Circuit is not with us most of the time. So, are there lawsuits? A whole bunch of them. I mean, one of our champions was here. There are other top attorneys that are filing lawsuits. And, you know, I've mentioned before, and, you know, I recognize most of your faces, so I don't have to tell you about Gun Owners California and what we do and how long we've been around and all that stuff. But I can tell you this, that over the last 12 to 18 months, I have never seen more cooperation amongst the pro-gun organizations ever before than I'm seeing now. That includes new kids on the block that are very welcome into the fight. Firearms Policy Coalition, golly, they bring goosebumps to my, you know, in Hawaii they call it chicken skin because of what it is that they're doing and taking the legislature to task. Working with Cal Guns Foundation and Don Kilmer and SAF to bring these important lawsuits. CRPA is a rejuvenated organization, California Rifle Pistol Association, with leadership that wants to do more than sanction events. Their goal is to bring new shooters into the shooting sports and to professionalize their lobbying and legal activities so that they are more effective. That's fantastic. The National Rifle Association is refocusing their efforts right here in California. That's a beautiful thing. So working together, you bet your sweet bippy we are. But we can't work under the same roof. Because when NRA or SAF or Cal Guns Foundation or CRPA Foundation, when they file a lawsuit, you see, they can't write their own friend of the court briefs to the lawsuit that they file. That's where we, all of the other players, play a very important role. We get to write briefs on issues that they were not able to address in their primary lawsuits, or that they ask for somebody to cover, and we write those lawsuits and we send them to the court to be considered in making the decisions on these primary lawsuits that are filed. How important are amicus briefs? Well, how many people remember just recently that Justice Thomas broke his 10-year silence? Yeah. Pretty cool, huh? He quoted from the Gun Owners of America, Gun Owners of California brief that we submitted. The language and the questions that he used were straight out of our brief. Do you think they're important? You bet your sweet baby they're important. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing. Right now, we perceive that most of our great victories are going to come from the courts. Especially, that's important for us here in California, where we live, you know, behind the razor wire and occupied territories, and we are the remnant. We are the ragtag team of patriots that are banding together in order to save this great state from those boneheads under the dome, from the tyranny that they are shoving down our throats. You know, during the founding days, our founding fathers were protesting England because they put a 3% tax on tea, and they wanted a 3% tax on gunpowder. 3%. How much are we paying now with background checks and dealer record of sales fees and all of the other gobbledygook that we have to pay in order to exercise our Second Amendment rights? Our founding fathers would have said, "What took you stinking goofball so long to stand up and fight?" This, by definition, is tyranny. Now, they would also say, "You don't have the right to take up arms yet. Not until those guys that are in power exert the level of tyranny that prevents us from voting. Once they have taken away our franchise to vote, that is tyranny. Then we start to imagine all kinds of things. But we can push back. Register and vote, or register to buy your ammo. We can do 5 degrees to domination. We can do those things. We just have to get off our proverbial soft spots and do it. We all have friends who continuously tell us, "You know, I'm not going to vote. I don't count. I'm just one vote." What difference does that make? Sheep did. Last election, there were 3 elections that were won and lost by less than 1 vote per precinct, and as a matter of fact, one election was won by less than 200 votes. 200 votes out of 80,000 votes cast. 1 vote doesn't matter? You bet it does. And that's what we have to share and encourage our friends to do. It'll make even more difference if you live in an area that is represented by those people that are very happy to strip your constitutional rights away from you. It'll make all the more difference. It really will. So you have to decide for yourselves. You don't need anything special. They've made it so easy to register to vote. You can go on the Secretary of State website and register to vote online instantly. You can do that. You can invite your friends. "Let me help you register to vote. Here's what you do." And you know what? I know this is a lot of work. I know you're busy with your job, your family, your business, whatever your hobbies. I know I've got you reloading 4,000 rounds of 45 ACP for me, and I don't want you to stop. So this is what I'm going to do for you. When it comes election time, I also want you to check that box that says vote by mail, so that you get your mail, your ballot sent to your home. And when it comes, you call me and say, "Hey Sam, I got my ballot. You want to help me?" I'll be right there. And then you help them with the information that's provided from you, all of the resources that are available at your fingertips, either on your phone or in our printed newsletters, of which we've got copies of here, and you help them to vote pro-gun. You will do more to help yourself doing that than anything else you can do. And if we do that several elections in a row, can you imagine a situation where they're debating in the state legislature on the merits of constitutional carry in the state of California? How cool is that? Now, constitutional carry means open or concealed, and in all cases, loaded. We know that all of the scare tactics that the antis have done with the 11 states that have now become constitutional carry states. Actually, I think it's up to 13. All of the scare tactics that, it's going to be the shootout at the OK Corral, people walking down the streets with AR-15s and 30-round magazines strapped to their back and a couple of 45 ACPs, or just to mix it up, a 9mm on one side, a 45 on the other side, and a little 40 stuck in the back. And people are going to be slaughtered like flies in the streets. None of that has happened. Anywhere. Anywhere. You can count those people who live in constitutional carry states, all of those states. You add them to those people that have to endure a CCW process, and they are the most law-abiding citizens of all categories in the entire country. So why don't we add more people to that list? Well, we can. Register and vote, and help register your friends. And you can make a very real difference. You don't have to join a single organization to do that, although I know many of you folks are supporters of Governors of California. I see your names come by my desk. I get phone calls from you, and we're very grateful for your support. We need your support in order to continue the fight. But if you can't or don't want to join, that is not an excuse for you not to be involved. Because what we're talking about here doesn't cost anything except your own personal commitment. That's it. That's all it is. Now I'm going to talk about some of the gobbledygook that they're proposing in the state legislature and the arm wrestling match that's going on with the initiative and all of these bills in a minute. But before I do that, every time I come in and speak and I open it up for questions, I feel like I shortchange people and not give anybody enough time. I will shorten my presentation on the legislation in order to give everybody enough time to ask any question they might have with regards to elections, legislation in the legislature, or the courts. Even the laws, some of the local laws, we'll see if we can muddle our way through anything. Does anybody have any questions? Number one over here, I saw that on the corner of my eye. I'm in condition yellow, I'm ready to go, and I saw it. Go.
So for the Senate race, we've got Kamala, the Communist Harris. And it's an open primary, so whoever comes in second is going to be her opponent in the general. Is there somebody that we should support to come in second if there's any that is a more gun-friendly person than she is?
The question is with regards to the U.S. Senate race here, we've got Sanchez from Southern California and Harris from Northern California. It's the fight of the beauty queens, you know. They both consider themselves to be so lovely. President Obama sure thinks that Harris is lovely. He said she's the most beautiful attorney general in the country. Oh well. That's something about his taste. But anyway, here's the bottom line. What we're talking about being able to have a significant influence, we're not there yet. We don't have enough elected, registered people who have their mindset toward electing pro-gun people to make a difference yet. The fact of the matter is that Sanchez and Harris, if you want to be realistic, are probably going to be those two that make it to the top. If every elected Republican, or not elected, registered Republican, were to vote for one of the Republican candidates, they would still come in third place right now. Okay? And the fact of the matter is, all of the Republicans are pro-gun. It's the way it is. Now, some of them refuse to answer. Some of them we know personally. Some of them have a track record. They're all pro-gun. So, being realists here and not fantasy people, we have to understand that that's the dynamic that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to put our focus in other places. But Sanchez is really happy to pick at Harris because of her problems with the APPS program and every database that they run at the Department of Justice, the number of crimes that are being committed in the state of California under her watch, and the fact that they've had to rig the system to make it look like crime is going down in California. I've talked to, I can't tell you how many sheriffs I've talked to, and they all say, hey, listen, Sam, the fact of the matter is, we see a increase in the number of crimes that are being committed in California. And I walked into it and said, well, why isn't that reflected in the statistics? And they kind of go, Sam, how long have you been doing this? And I said, I know. I just had to ask the question so I could tell a story to my friends. They said, when you take felonies, a crime that is considered a felony, and you redefine it as a misdemeanor, misdemeanor conviction information or charge information is not kept the same way that felonies are. So by changing the theft of a gun, anything less than $950 or anything of value less than $950, it isn't that fewer of those crimes are being committed. As a matter of fact, more of those crimes are being committed now than in the past. But they're not calling them felonies anymore. So they artificially make it look like it's going sideways. And Sanchez is bright enough to be sharpening her pitchfork or axe or sword, whatever she's going to be using, to explain to people about Harris. Now, let me tell you, Sanchez is no stalwart. She's rated F on gun issues. But sometimes, well, let me put it this way. If you're given only one choice, and you've got to pick one, syphilis or gonorrhea. Now, your question would be, the smart question is, which one is more curable? And then you make that choice. So you have a fighting chance. If Harris becomes the United States Senator, she will be on a soapbox like nobody's business. And that would not be good. Sanchez doesn't have that kind of personality, although she will try very hard. And there's the dynamic of Northern California and Southern California. And then there's the dynamic of the African American and the Hispanic communities. All kinds of gobbledygook is taking place in there. But nonetheless, they have enough votes in the Democrat Party right now to elect those two people. So those will be our choices: syphilis or gonorrhea. I mean Sanchez or Harris in November. What do? You take the Republicans and you put them on the board. And you go, because you cannot find yourself voting for an anti-gunner just on principle. That's the best suggestion I can give you. There are far more races where we're going to have an opportunity to make a significant impact. The reality is we're not going to have much of an opportunity to make an impact in that race. Mr. Poe.
Phoning people. Last time we did an election, you had lists of people for us to call.
Yes.
Will you be doing that this year?
Yes, we're going to be doing that again this year for the general. And this time we're going to be doing it in complete cooperation with virtually every other pro-gun organization. So the number of people we are going to have an opportunity to talk to in specified districts where we want to tick them off is going to be much greater.
When will you be releasing those lists?
What's that?
When will we be starting this fall?
Well, you see, we have to wait till after the primary to see who the candidates are. And then we have to evaluate which seats are the ones where we have a prayer of a chance of having an impact. A lot of that is based with how many identified pro-gun voters we have in a particular district that we can influence to change a vote.
Fair to say we're talking September?
August, I think, we'll be ready to go. Yeah, we're far ahead of where we were last time. Excuse me for spitting ice. My mom would shoot me right now for having no class. First here and then over here. Yes, sir.
I've been voting by mail for years because I can fill things out at my free time, be sure I vote, and then I will turn it in at the voting place. Getting on to talking to people, I don't know that many people anymore, and I don't get around that much. Does your office keep lists of people who should be registered but aren't? Is there any way that people like I, who have free calling, could get numbers of people to call that convince them that it does make sense to vote?
We don't have that. All we have is a list of our members, and last time we asked our membership at Governors of California, well over 90% were registered to vote. So we're going to make sure that all of the other groups also do the same thing to make sure that at very least we have our bases covered. We don't have the resources like the opposition. We don't have a Bloomberg that can give us, $10 million to do a project to identify pro-gun voters the way they identify anti-gun voters. So you've got my head turning, and I will be sure to communicate with Mark if we come up with a solution as to how people who don't have a lot of friends can participate.
Yeah, I have a neighbor, for example, he's one of the 100 vice presidents at Google, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him to find out how he votes. I'm sure he's already, he and his wife are both registered. But, there's no point wasting your time trying to talk a real deep liberal into changing his mind.
You know what? Deal with friends. Just deal with your friends and acquaintances, your buddies at the gun club, at the Sunnyvale Gun Club, or if you go out in the forest and you see a bunch of folks sitting out there shooting at one of the open ranges, talk to whomever you can. Whomever you can. Yes?
A couple of nice, last meeting was the day of the football draft. Couldn't believe we didn't have a lot of people here. The road wasn't busy. People pay more attention to football than they do to their gun rights, and this blows me away.
Well, you know what? That's your first observation. Let me respond to that real quickly. We are fiercely independent people. If we had our way, nobody would bother us about anything. We'd be off the grid. We'd see our neighbors as we're riding by on horseback, so that we don't have to rely on gasoline. We are fiercely independent. We have to, Mark was talking about me having to figure out how to deal with the knuckleheads at the legislature for 36 years and how ugly that is, and it really truly is, but I've had to teach myself, and I'm starting to understand, after 36 years, what it takes to be involved in this process. We have to teach ourselves to start taking our independence and cherishing that by giving some of our time to being involved. And you know what? It takes a few. I think the first time I ever came to the Golden State Second Amendment Council, I think there were like 25 people. How many years ago was that? 8, 9, 10 years ago?
36.
Come on, Mark, pay attention. It was a long time ago. Look at how I am so encouraged to see this many people showing up to listen to a knucklehead like me and get all of the fun stories and interesting stories that you're getting here. I'm sure everybody isn't coming here to get some raffle tickets to win some prizes. You're here to learn something, and that's a beautiful thing. And getting people involved just takes us saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to a meeting. We're going to talk about our gun rights. Why don't you come? I think you'll find it really interesting. Invite them, invite them, invite them. And they'll say, no, I've got to take the dog out, or I've got to take the trash out, or, I got to do something or other. And one of these days they say, okay, I'll come with you. And you bring them, and you got to vote. You get them in one time, and they're over. So we got to do it. Second question, and then two over here, then over here.
Really a comment about rural versus urban. I'd like to take a wild bear and put it into these meetings with these people. Shut the door and let them deal with it. No guns, no nothing. They need to realize that we're making rules for the urban and rural people. And if the rural people can't have guns, how are they supposed to protect themselves?
The fact of the matter is the vast majority of voters are concentrated in the greater Bay Area and the Los Angeles, San Diego metroplex. And they could give a rat's rear end about the rest of California. That's bottom line. They vote their own self-interest and they're allowing themselves to be led. So we have to be smarter than they are in order to make an issue. Senator Richardson, when he served for 22 years, he kept threatening to take a piglet in and release it on the Senate floor and let it run around and have all of these members jump on top of their desks, scared that a piglet was running around the chambers of the Senate. But he said ultimately, well, that doesn't show the proper decorum, and maybe he would do something to the red carpet that is in there, and he'd have to clean it up. He also took in a turkey call one time, and every time a bad bill came out, he said, what the heck is that? Finally, somebody saw him and said, Senator Richardson, you're out of order there. He said, well, it's a turkey call, and that's a turkey bill. You know, so. Okay, question over here? Yeah.
Is this the Sanchez that's running for Senate, the same one that came about Warren?
Yes, that is the one and same, what was the, Loretta Sanchez. She ran against, his name, B1 Bob Dornan, one of the strongest defenders of the military, super conservative, solid Second Amendment, really a good guy. What they did is they changed the district around him, and then they really picked on him and spent a whole lot of money, and Loretta Sanchez sashayed her way into that district and has been a member of Congress ever since. Question, yes?
Is there every single precinct, there's a list of all the
Sure.
people who vote and how they vote, whether they're registered or not?
Yes.
And it seems to me that there must be some way, somebody, including in the government, must have a list of who own guns or shotguns or nuclear weapons or something out there. Do they have a way in a list of precinct A and precinct B, list of governors, and check whether they're actually registered?
Did everybody hear that question? There's got to be some way to identify list of gun owners so that we can identify them, compare them to the rolls of registered voters, and we know who we need to go and get to register and who we need to talk to about how they need to vote in order to protect their rights. Fact of the matter is, in California, we are probably one of the only states that makes it almost impossible for us to get any of the databases that the government maintains for gun ownership or registration or something. I'm a hunter. I got tags to hunt elk in Wyoming. They did the draw, and no sooner was the draw finished than I started getting phone calls and the next day postcards from guys who wanted me to avail myself of their services. How? Because the state of Wyoming made that list of people who were hunters available to the public and people could correspond. Here in California, they don't do that. As a matter of fact, and you're next. As a matter of fact, in 1982, when we defeated Prop 15, because we had the same constraints back there, we went out on a lark, and at that time we could get the list of registered pickup truck owners. And we prospected the list of registered pickup truck owners, and not only did we make it pay for itself, but we were able to encourage a bunch of people to vote against Prop 15, and we succeeded. But that's as close as we've ever come to identifying program voters. Now, each of our organizations, we talk to our people. We talk NRA with its hundreds of thousands of members, and CRPA, and gun owners, and firearms policy. We already talk with our members. So it's a very daunting task, and they don't want us to make it easier for us. So they don't, all of those lists are verboten. Yes, we buy the registration rolls every year from the state of California, all of the registered voters. We bounce our list of members off of that to see who's registered and who's not. Those that aren't, we concentrate on contacting them to make sure that they're registered to vote, and so do the other organizations. Next question, then we're coming over here. Yeah.
Just a response to that. If you have a neighbor that is pro-gun, this primary election, you can go and look at the SWEET index, and you can look up that person's address to see if they're registered to vote. If for some reason you don't want to ask them, are you registered to vote?
Yeah.
And you can find out for sure whether or not they're registered to vote. And then if they aren't, you can talk to them and get them registered for the general election.
Here's how you break the ice.
Not a website, you go into the polling place.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's 2 copies of the street index that are posted somewhere inside the polling place where you can read through it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the outside of the pool and
Yeah, they're telling us hanging inside.
Here's, if you're not gonna go to the voting location, the booth, to find out if your neighbors are registered to vote, don't start the questioning with, hey, are you registered to vote? Start it with, hey, are you interested in voting to protect your Second Amendment rights or your constitutional rights? And they say, well, yeah. Then you can ask, hey, are you registered to vote? Well, no. Then how can you protect them? And then you kind of break the ice and you get them into it. Okay, okay, we got over here first, over there, and then we'll come over here and over here. Yeah.
So where does the gun issue resonate with the millennials? And is there any specific message that resonates with them? I mean, that's my concern. I come here, I go.
No, that's really a very good question. Is the Second Amendment or the Bill of Rights or the Constitution a message that resonates with millennials? Only if you can put it in their lingo and make them, and then present a case that they might consider, especially if they get something free out of it. But let me share this with you. That is why it is so important for the Firearms Policy Coalition to be involved in this process, because they derive a huge amount of their support from the internet, from social media and stuff, and they are by nature bringing in millennials into the process. And we all know we get a couple of those youngsters, you know, on a kick, and they can move entire campuses or communities and spread this stuff all over the internet. It is absolutely something that we are looking at, especially on the initiative, and we're going to be focusing on that. You know what? Sometimes it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. I've been in this business when we had to go in and punch our cards. Actually, it was not a, and you know, actually make phone calls with a dial that went like this, phone banks, and we still had to lick our pencils in order to make them work. But I'm learning. You know, I finally learned how to use an IBM 8086. I'm kidding. We're learning. We're trying to figure out what better means. We're trying to get better. And the nice thing about doing social media and reaching out these groups is that it's almost free. We just have to be smart enough to do that. So we are working on that right now, focusing on building that mechanism in the fight against the Newsom initiative, and then we will all benefit by whatever mechanism we derive from that. Other question? Yes?
So in your opinion, based on your experience, of the 18, 20 or so really bad Assembly and Senate bills right now being bantered back and forth, you know, hardcore anti-gun, how many of those, you know, do you think are going to make it to the governor's desk? And then how many of those do you think he's going to veto? It seems to have a fairly good record of vetoing some of the more onerous things, especially if you bombard him with emails and letters and faxes and phone calls and everything.
That is a really great question. I'm going to answer it in just a second. First, let me get any other questions that anybody else might have. Yes, ma'am.
What's the last day you can the register to vote?
2 days ago for the primary, but you can register up until, what, 30 days before the election or something like that. So we got plenty of time for the general, and that's the election that's going to be important. Okay, that one is going to be important. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, actually, I had a question about one of the bills. Do you want to answer that after?
Okay, let's hold off on all the legislation first. Any other, yeah, another non-bill related.
Well, actually, a comment. So, as I am technically a millennial on the older side, and I'm here with you, obviously, caring about this, I can give you some insight, which is focus on how completely idiotic these are if you actually pay attention to what they do. Not what they say they do, what they actually do. And that's what seems to really work well, talking to people, you know, on the internet appropriately. is phonological consistencies, how it doesn't work, how it's just gonna be more laws that do nothing.
That's a very, very good question, and yes.
That's the challenge I have. Is my daughter just turned 18. She's registered to vote. She's hardcore on our side on all this. But a lot of her peers in school, they're getting spoon-fed garbage from their teachers. They, you know, guns are evil, more evil than Republicans, and it's doing it again. And it's trying to offer with the facts, but it seems like it's definitely an uphill battle.
Are we in time?
Yeah, take whatever you
Okay. Okay, you guys, you're taking my speaker's fees. I'm gonna have to pay you guys. And it's such a big fee. Oh, yeah. Listen, let me answer your question and your question with this. I'm gonna lead into the legislation. Number one, I got a very interesting phone call a couple of weeks ago. It was from a friend of mine who was working with Univision. You know those, the Hispanic, you have Telemundo and Univision, and in English it's Telemundo and Univision. Okay? In the emerging Hispanic community in California, they look to these two mega media corporations for a lot of their information. Socially, election-wise, they listen to all the talking heads, and they cover all of the antis, and they go out there and they say something, and somebody has to translate to them, because very few of the antis know how to hablar español. Hablar español. Excuse my grammar. So I went to this meeting with this lady who's in charge of media stuff for Univision, and she's Anglo. Anglo. She's a non-Hispanic, Caucasian. I think that's the boxes that we have to fill out. Non-Hispanic. And she said, you know, Sam, at Univision, we're getting tired of our folks calling us over and over and over again, and all we have is Mayor Bloomberg and Moms Demand Action and all of the anti-gun organizations are out there, because we're starting to feel that isn't the whole story. So we want to invite you to think about how you can help us to get the message across as to on the other side. And they said we regularly do surveys of our listening audience to find out what they think on everything. Cost of milk, you know, toll roads, you know, internet service, gun control. And every time they ask the question, do you believe in gun control? The vast majority of them, just like pretty much across the board, would say, well, yeah, I believe in some gun control. Some things make sense. And it's because they don't know what that means. And I said, wait, stop. You need to ask the question this way. Do you believe that it's okay for the government to pass a law that would make the gun that is in your closet and the magazine that is in your closet for that gun and the ammunition that is in your closet for that gun illegal, and yet not do anything to stop criminals from committing crimes with guns? What do you think the answer would be? That's not fair. Eso no está bien. Tenemos que hacer algo. We have to do something. And I said, if you really are sensitive to what your folks, your listening audience really feels about stuff, you need to ask a different question. You cannot fall prey to the global things that I can predict to you, right? Don't spend the money on a survey. Come to me and I'll tell you what the answers are going to be and how many people are going to support these issues, depending on how you ask the question. They said, wow, that makes sense. We're working on another survey and we'd like to have you help us to write the questions. I said, yeah. And as a matter of fact, if you want to have somebody who habla, I'd be happy to come on your station to counter Bloomberg and Moms Demand Action and all of these other people. And there are plenty of other people who would stand up And we would say it in Spanish to have credibility with the listening audience. And we have an opportunity to communicate with a community in California that really, for all intents and purposes, is a clean slate. We have Hispanics that live in wealthy neighborhoods. We have those that live in rural. We have those that live in Watts. We have those that live in Blackhawk, Beverly Hills. And they all still look to these two institutions for their information. So how about if we start tickling their minds and presenting to them the truth of everything that's going on in the state legislature and talking about what these bills specifically do. Universal background checks. Well, you know, that kind of makes sense. As a matter of fact, amongst gun owners, if you ask that question in a survey, a lot of them say, well, you know, that kind of makes sense. Doesn't matter that we already have universal background check here in the state of California. They don't know that. But it's a buzzword in order to get them on the anti-gun side. So, let's talk about these bills. I had to bring a folder this time with front and back all of the bills that are making it down through the legislative process. I'm not going to go through the numbers. You can go to our website and get all the numbers. I know that Golden State's Second Amendment Council has got information on the bills and descriptions and all of that stuff. You can get that stuff. But this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to ban bullet buttons. There are 3 bills that will ban bullet buttons, make them illegal. What happens if you make bullet buttons illegal? All of your ARs and AKs will be illegal, unless you register them as an assault weapon under the laws of California, which means that when you die, your gun dies. You cannot sell it, you cannot will it away, you cannot transfer it in any way. You die, it dies.
Wouldn't someone with one of those guns be able to, like, put a screw or a bolt or something?
It has to be, under the definition of these laws, permanently affixed so that you have to disassemble the action in order to remove the magazine. So screws aren't going to work. Super glue is not going to work. None of that stuff. Question?
For those that did register under the assault weapons and their gun dies and they die, how is the state going to know to collect them?
Well,
I mean, dead people vote.
The answer to that question is they're not going to know until they find that a firearm that's been used in the commission of a crime. Then they can trace and follow the history or try to find out what happened. So 3 bills to ban bullet buttons.
Can you give us the bill number so we can?
Yeah, it's
1663, SB 880, and 1673? Or 80?
you know what? Grab one of our newsletters. I've got them all listed in there for you. It starts to look like summer spaghetti to me when you have to go with all of the bills. And you know, one reason I never wanted to be a cop is because I didn't want to learn all of the penal codes. And then, if I had become a cop, halfway through the process, they changed all the numbers on the penal code, so you had to relearn them all over again, and that's too much for my brain. As a matter of fact, since you're really interested in it, I'm going to leave with you my copy of our master file with the description for every one of the bills and where they are in the legislative process. So save your risk, okay?
Yeah, I just have the CRP print out here, and I'm trying to follow along here at the top.
3 bills to ban bullet buttons, yes. Still not off bullet buttons yet.
Just want to make a comment. 1663 is worse than it bans featureless.
It's,
Yeah.
man. Okay, I'm done. You're stealing my thunder, man. 3 bills to ban bullet buttons. Now, us being smart and eager beavers, we are already figuring out ways, if we have to contend with that issue, how we can continue to be law-abiding citizens and not register the multiple million AR-15s and AKs platforms that have been sold since the passage of the assault weapons ban in the state of California. They only have 178,000 registered assault weapons in the state right now. If everybody who had a bullet button gun had to register it as an assault weapon, it would be millions. And that's another database that the Department of Justice is going to get to screw up. Millions. Millions. Okay? So, regardless of the details, really bad bills. 3 of them. 1 in the Senate, 2 in the Assembly. Another bill in the Assembly is worse because it basically bans all center-fire semi-automatic rifles that we own. Not only bullet button guns, BAR, Browning BAR, Woodstock, height loss, bottom ejecting, magazine-fed hunting rifle at 243, 308, 30-06 or 300 Win Mag, 7mm rim mag also. The BAR, all of the Kel-Tecs, all of the Mini 14s, all of the M1 carbines. Bans them all and says that if you own one of those, you will have the opportunity to register it as an assault rifle if you want to keep it. But after June 1st of whatever date they set, whatever year they set, it's keep a moving target. No new guns of those types will be allowed to be sold into the state of California at all, period. Nobody else has them. So again, when you die, those guns die, and they're okay with that.
Bill number?
Huh?
Bill number?
I got them in my cheat sheet. Oh, those are the gut and amends. Gut and amends coming next, folks. They're not in the right order. 1664 is the Levine bill. That's the semi-auto ban. 1663. 1663 is the Chew bill. I'm sorry, 1663 is the semi-auto ban, and the 1664 is the bullet button ban. And then 880, SB 880 in the Senate is the other bullet button ban. But that's not all, folks. If you're willing to buy today, you might get 2 of them. And let me explain. So they want to ban bullet buttons, they want to ban semi-automatic centerfire rifles, they want to allow us to buy only 1 gun of any kind per month.
Say, John?
Huh? Okay. Again, they want to pass a law that says that if you have a gun lost or stolen and you don't report it within 5 days of the time, the government thinks that you should have known that it was stolen or lost, you're going to be a criminal. Okay? So we've got all of you 80%ers that don't have serial numbers. The state wants to require you to register with the Department of Justice to get a serial number to put on it, or else you're going to be in possession of an illegal gun. Of course, we got started and said, you know, the first thing the criminals who really want to play havoc with you guys is they take out, they machine out or scratch out the serial numbers. And they're the criminals. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in America that have legally, under federal and state laws, manufactured their own personal gun for their own personal use that cannot be transferred, cannot be sold, but completely legal. It's okay for them to do that. Question?
Well, the point is to make us criminals, isn't it?
What's that?
The point is to make us criminals.
Yeah.
Because once we're criminals, and the excuse is, do we think to take away our rights of all time?
Right. You're right.
And especially if you understand the Soviet system, and it was, as you walked around the Soviet system, everyone knew that you committed crimes, which one they were going to convict you of.
You're right. They want to let the criminals who are actually committing crimes out of prison and out of jail, and they want to charge us with a crime so that we can never own a gun again. That's the net result of what they're trying to do. Now, the people that they let out of prison are going to get guns and ammunition Within 45 minutes of anywhere you put them in the state of California, blindfolded, they'll get guns and ammunition through the black market, and we as law-abiding citizens, of course, won't want to break the law anymore. So, other bills. Lending. Right now, we can lend a gun to somebody. We don't have to dross it out to them. They want to say that if you lend a gun for more than 30 days to somebody other than a direct bloodline relative, you have to dross it to them. So I have a friend's buddy who's taking a law enforcement academy, and they required him to have Glock 19s. I happen to have a Glock 19. You want to borrow it? Yeah. How long is the class? 6 months. I would have to dross it out to him for him to be able to borrow my gun, and then when he finishes with the academy, he's going to go to a sheriff's department that uses SIGs. So he would have to I would have to dross the gun back to myself in order to get it. Doesn't make sense, does it? All they're trying to do is cause a major pain in the, you know what, for us. There are multiple unfinished receiver bills, lost and stolen. There's, here's an interesting one. Assemblywoman Melendez, one of our heroes in the Public Safety Committee, the Vice Chairwoman, she's a Republican, former Naval Intelligence officer. She sponsored a bill that said, you know what? No matter what anybody says under Prop 47, nobody really knew that stealing a gun was no longer going to be a felony. And that at $950, it is a felony, and $949, it isn't a felony. So she sponsored a bill to re-felonize that crime, make all guns a felony. Assemblyman Cooper, a member of the Democrat caucus, sponsored the exact same bill except changed the date because he didn't want her to steal all the thunder. She caused a stink, and because she was a vice chairwoman, they sent it to appropriations. But Cooper did one better. He goes over to the Senate side and cuts a deal with Senator Kevin De Leon, got them in another bill, a bill that was dead. Remember last time I came, or multiple times, I don't remember when, there's no such thing as a dead bill until the last gavel goes down at the last second of the close of the 2-year session. These are zombies. They're dead for all intents and purposes, but somehow they go back and breathe life into them. They gutted the environmental protection language that was in the bill. They put Cooper's bill in, and they ran it through the Senate in order to put it in ahead of the line so that he can beat Melendez. Funny things happen in the legislature.
Did it pass?
It's still going through the process. Ammunition registration. We all know that Senator De Leon wants his ammunition registration bill. Now, if you don't understand what that means and how important an impact that's going to be to us, and how it doesn't really make sense, first of all, we as ammunition purchasers will have to apply for basically a license to buy ammunition. They will charge us $50. That's going to go up with the cost of living index every year, or every time we renew, $50. And then every time you go and you buy ammunition, you show your card, you prove that you are a law-abiding citizen before you are allowed to exercise your constitutional right. I have a problem with that.
How do you prove that?
How what?
How do you prove you're a law-abiding citizen?
By showing them the card that they have given you that says you're a law-abiding citizen.
Don't forget the background check.
Hang on. There's a background check that goes along with the purchase of that card. Now, federal law says that you cannot use the NICS system, the National Instant Check, Criminal Instant Check system, for anything in California other than gun purchases. Okay? They're going to use it for ammunition purchases. Federal government says, you can't do that. FBI says that's illegal. You do it, and we're going to send in the hostage rescue team to arrest you all and take you to prison. So what is the state of California going to have to do? They're going to have to go out and assemble all of the components of the NICS system to create their own unique database in order to have a complete background check system that Harris will administer in order for us to be allowed to buy ammunition. Then every time you go and you buy ammunition, you got to put your name, your address, your phone number, your driver's license number, the brand of ammunition you bought, how many rounds you bought, the name of the salesman who sold it to you, and your thumbprint. every time you buy ammunition. And they're going to charge you an extra $1 for every time you buy ammunition. Then, everybody who is licensed, or the only people you will be able to buy ammunition from are those people that are licensed to sell ammunition. In other words, they have to go out and get a special license and pay a fee. And the state will maintain a database of all licensed ammunition dealers. And those are the only people you can buy ammunition from. They raised it. We said, you know what? I mean, we can't take our kids trap shooting or the neighbor kid and give them a box of 25 rounds. So they said, okay, if you sell more than 500 rounds of ammunition in a year, you qualify as a dealer. I said, 500 rounds? That's a brick of 22. I use that in about 2.5 hours shooting squirrels up in Modoc County. You know, and if you're a competitive shooter and the course of fire has 600 rounds in a day, and you buy them from the range or a friend who reloaded to you, they're going to have to be a dealer. Now here's the kicker. So they need to charge a fee in order to maintain that database. They are grandfathering in all existing licensed gun dealers as a licensed ammunition dealer, which means they don't have to pay a fee, which means they're not going to make any money in order to fund the maintenance, creation and maintenance of the database. We pointed that out to them and they kind of said, what are you talking about? And then, in essence, every gun dealer is going to have to spend as much time selling you a box of ammunition as they do selling you a gun. How many mom and pop operations are there where there's only 1 or 2 people in the store who cannot afford to do that and will have to say, I'm not selling ammunition in my store anymore, I can't. I can't afford to do that. I can't give so much time. I explained to them that there are 2,400 licensed FFL dealers in the state of California, licensed by the state and federal government. Out of that, only 600 of them are storefronts. So you have a lot of mom and pop operations that are operating out of their home and completely legal. They get all the audits, they get all the checks, they have to keep their guns safe, they comply with all the laws, everything like that. And you are now saying that they are not going to be able to sell ammunition because they can't afford to do it that way. And you cannot go to Cabela's or Shields or Sportsman's Warehouse in Nevada, buy your ammunition, bring it into the state, because that would be illegal importation. The only way you can do that is to buy it there and have it shipped to a licensed dealer in the state of California, and then they get to charge you if they want, and then you have to do all of the registration stuff.
Sam,
yes.
On that point, I also understand that the CHP is posting people up at Cabela's, up at Bird Eye, and looking for California license plates. And if they see them parked there, then they radio that ahead back to their guys on the California side, watch for his plate number, pull them over and see if he's buying ammo.
Well, it's even more insidious than that. It isn't so much the CHP as it is the Department of Justice, who has agents at every Reno gun show. They have agents who regularly go to Shields, Cabela's, Sportsman's Warehouse, and there's another big store in town. And they drive around, and if they see a California license plate, they kind of go in there and they check them out to see if they're buying any high-capacity magazines. And if they see them buying a high-capacity magazine or something that is illegal in California, they do radio ahead with the make, model, and car, license plate, and they are stopped in the state of California. So we are employing DOJ agents to work in Nevada in order to prevent us from, prevent people from bringing in illegal high-capacity magazines. And you bet your sweet bippy that they're going to increase that process if it's also illegal for you to bring ammunition. If you go hunting with your buddy in Montana and you buy 2 boxes of ammo and you only shoot a box and a half, it will be illegal for you to bring that half-empty box into the state of California. This is a really, really, really bad idea. Cost of ammunition is going to go through the roof.
Question?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I got 3 questions here. Let's start ladies first. I know you've been waiting, but you know what?
My understanding is it also applies to all reloading components.
No, it does not apply to all reloading components, only projectiles. Yeah. So you can get all the cases, all the powder, all the primers that you want, but they're going to make it applied it to projectiles.
I read through that, and it didn't say bullets, it said it only applied to loaded ammunition consisting of, so I got a different question.
You're right, but they know that they made that mistake, and when they get the bill, it's gonna have that provision in it. Okay, your question.
So as I recall, the one that has the $50 permit is Newsom's ballot initiative, and the one that DeLeon is behind is actually worse in that you don't get a car, you don't go through an online check immediately for the purchase, and there is no way to get around that, so if it's down, you can't buy ammo, period.
That's true. Question in the back.
Well, just trying to follow how we're going to have a state law on purchasing ammunition, but it's not enforceable out of state. So unless they are expending resources to try to track people at gun stores, how are they going to know people bring ammo in? It's not like buying a rifle in Nevada where it's a federal law, so they have to check.
Well, actually, federal law does allow you to buy a gun in a neighboring state and bring it into the state as long as you comply with the laws of the neighboring state. You send it to the dealer and then it's processed, a 10-day waiting period and background check and all of that stuff. You can do that. With ammunition, they would be treated the same way. How are they going to know? Here's your answer. Let me get it for you. Who knows? They're going to be very eager beavers in trying to figure that out. Now, there's a whole bunch of other bills that they're Mickey Mousing around, and this obviously is the most important. And I'm going to close by sharing with you what is going on in the legislature right now. You have Pretty Boy Gavin, San Francisco luminary, wants to be governor, decides that the gun control issue is an issue that he wants to be the king of, that he thinks it's going to push him to the governorship, but he doesn't want it to appear on the ballot with him when he runs for 2 years. He wants it to appear now. And so he can take credit for it. Okay? So he's got all of this gobbledygook he's got in there. He took things. Ammunition registration, banning possession of all magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. If you have one that was legally grandfathered, your possession of that magazine will be illegal after a certain date. You will have to sell it outside the state, and there is no market for used California magazines outside of California. You will have to turn it into the police, or you will have to destroy it. Now, you folks are smart enough to know that that sounds like a massive violation of the 14th Amendment or the 4th Amendment, 14th Amendment due process and compensation without just, confiscation without just compensation. Government taking. And that's exactly what it is. Now, we're prepared to go to court on that, of course. So you've got ammunition, you've got magazines, lost and stolen. Lost and stolen, you lose a gun, you're the criminal. And the last provision is that the state of California, the Attorney General will have to compile all of its database information and give it to the FBI to be added into the NICS system. The reality is the FBI doesn't want it because it is so jacked up and doesn't meet their criteria for information that needs to be on their database, which is used for instant background checks, that they don't want that database. And it would be millions of people added to that database. FBI seems to think that their system is working fairly well countrywide, and they don't want it to be bogged down by this. So these are the provisions of the initiative, yes?
I was going to say, what about thoughts about federal preemption, given the fact that he did have ammunition registration to begin with, and it was an 86 Firearms and Protection Act that got rid of it?
You know,
people were, the purpose of the law was to get rid of what they're proposing to do now.
yes, but the only way we can actually take these issues to court, before the court, in order to deal with them, is that it has to pass, it has to be enacted, and then we have to get an injured party in order to challenge them. You can't challenge a law that hasn't been passed yet, or an initiative that hasn't been passed yet. You can challenge it on all kinds of technical stuff, but not on what the body of the language is. You can't say this is unconstitutional, we're going to challenge it now before it goes to the vote. The courts won't do that. It has to be passed, the people have to decide, and then they decide whether it's injurious to the Constitution. So, wish we could challenge them ahead of time, but if we did that, we would be like they are, pre-crime. They are deciding that they're going to pass all of these laws to prevent us from committing the crimes that they know we are going to possess if we have guns and ammunition and magazines and all of these things. That's why they pass these laws, because they know that we are violent people, which is what one person testified in committee. We gun owners are violent people. And what Senator Lois Wilk said, every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the state of California is getting a concealed weapons permit, and we have to protect our children against all those people. So, yes. So you have the initiative. You have Senator Kevin De Leon, who views himself as the existing reigning king on gun control. Although his premier bill is now tied up before the California Supreme Court, ammunition registration. He wrote it to register handgun ammunition. Well, the courts had ruled that the definition under California statute for handgun ammunition was unconstitutionally stupid, vague. And therefore had every step of the way declared the law unenforceable, and even though it is actually written in the codes, it is in our codes, but it cannot be enforced. We're waiting for the Supreme Court to take action on that right now. He's got ammunition registration, and then what he did is he gutted and amended. Now, those of you that are hunters know what you do when you gut something. You rip it open and you take all the guts out, you cut it out, and then you turn the meat into something you can eat. Well, frankly, being a Mexican, there's a lot of stuff that would have come out that I can figure out how to eat. Call me noodle. So he took 5 bills that were dead in the Senate. They were all assembly bills that were dead in the Senate Appropriations Committee. They were dead. They were environmental issues and oil issues and all kinds of different things. And he stripped them of the language. And then he cut a deal with several assemblymen to jointly co-author his bills that have to do with the Gavin initiative. And then he threw another 1 or 2 just for fun. But mainly the bills that had to do with the Gavin Newsom initiative. And by doing that, gutting and amending those bills, bills in the legislature, they have to go through a policy committee, and then a finance committee, appropriations committee, and then to the floor, and then it goes to the other house, to the policy committee, the finance committee, and then to the floor. And if there's any differences, they come in for concurrence, they agree on the changes that they each made, and then it gets sent to the governor's office. Well, what Senator De Leon did is he took some of the bills that were in the assembly and took them to the Xerox machine, changed the number on it, and turned them into Senate bills by gutting and amending other Senate bills. He got other co-authors to help him with this thing. And those bills have been deemed to have been read in a policy committee, although they never hit the Public Safety Committee. They were in the Environmental Protection Committee, in the oil, whatever handles oil stuff. But because technically it went through a policy committee, those bills are now okay. He took them out, he amended them in the Appropriations Committee, sent them to the floor, they passed them out. They come back to the Assembly for a concurrence vote. They don't have to go to the Policy Committee and the Appropriations Committee and back to the floor. He jumped in front of the line. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, my mom says butting in line is a bad thing. And that's exactly what he did. So you have Newsom, De Leon, and now we have Speaker Rendon. He's out there saying, we want to play too. We don't want to be ignored on the gun control stuff. So they had a press conference with a bunch of assembly people, and they put together a package of 5 bills. All of the bills that are on this list, and they said these are all crushed up and spiffy new, and this is what we are going to concentrate on. We want to play in the gun control fight too. So they're trying to speed those bills through committee and send them to the Senate. so that there's going to be a crash somewhere. Now, Kevin DeLeon and Speaker Rendon do not want the initiative on the ballot. Why? Because the one thing they covet, other than their jobs, is to regain a supermajority in their House, in the Senate and the Assembly. And why is that important? With a supermajority, they completely ignore the governor. They can override every veto with a 2/3 vote. They can pass every tax increase they want without the governor's vote and without the help of any Republicans. That is what they're pushing for. And the last thing that Brendan and DeLeon want is pro-gun voters showing up in the target districts that they are trying to pick up. It's going to make their job harder. So that's why he's trying to speed through this package of bills and he's saying, come on, Gavin, we're taking care of this in the legislature. You don't need to do this in the initiative. So when DeLeon was pushing his bills, I went up to him and I said, at the podium, I said, hey, since you're doing this and we can't stop you, and you want to stop the Newsom initiative, because if this passes and the Newsom initiative passes, they chapter each other out. And because they're not exactly the same, it's going to cause legislative chaos. There'll be various issues that cannot work with each other, and then that'll be a problem. And then they'll have to come back another year later and maybe in 2 years fix that. So I said, hey, so does that mean that you'll sign the opposition argument on the ballot against the Newsom initiative if you get these bills back? And he goes, we need to talk. So his motivation is to dethrone Newsom. Newsom wants to do his own thing. He's arguing that I'm not going to go with you guys. I'm going to do my own thing because you guys have neglected your responsibility and we need to take it to the people. But you know what? His tail is being wagged by the Democrat Party leadership and stuff who gave them over $2 million to pass this initiative, and if they jerk his chain, he will say, yes, sir, or ma'am. So there's a big fight going on. Now the last portion is this. Every one of these bills are going to make it to the governor's desk. Every one. Now, we've been doing our homework to find out what we think the governor's going to do. And this is what our expectation is. That unless the governor has some sort of a deal with DeLeon to derail Gavin Newsom, who, by the way, is becoming pretty annoyed that every day Gavin Newsom calls the governor's mansion and says, hi, how's the governor feeling today? Is he still alive? Because if he isn't, then I'm the governor. He's finding him very annoying, doesn't particularly like him, and would love nothing more than to stuff the initiative down his throat. But politics comes into play here. This is what we expect will happen. The governor will veto every one of the bills that he has already vetoed in the past. Semi-automatic bans, bullet button bans, high-cap magazine bans, lost and stolen. Does that all sound familiar? That's all the stuff that's on the initiative. That unless he cuts some sort of a deal, we expect that he would veto those, and probably some of the other bills. One gun a month. He sees the loss in sales tax to the state. And he doesn't even like the serial numbers on 80%ers. He vetoed that before. But he'll sign something. He'll sign the making it a felony again to steal a gun. And if he wants to tube the initiative, he will sign ammunition registration. If he signs that, that's the tip of the hat, and we know what he's trying to do, and that's derail Gavin Newsom. Other than that, our best chance is going to be in the governor's office and then in the courts. So my best educated guess is that he will veto all of the things that, the biggest, baddest, ugliest things that are on the plate, because he's already vetoed them in the past. Not all together, but this time he will have the opportunity to do that. Jerry Brown is a creature of habit. Once he does something, he pretty well sticks to that particular issue. I'm not talking about he'll always be pro-gun, but he will see the wisdom in a particular aspect of gun control and will stick with that position, unless something drastically happens to change his mind. Now, you have a question?
He likes to shoot his AR.
What's that?
I understand he likes to shoot his AR.
I don't know that he owns an AR. He owns shotguns that his father, Edmund G. Brown Sr., gave him. He's gone duck hunting, and I know that he was at a fundraising event for CWA or some charitable organization, and he won another shotgun, and he was really happy about that. And around. Wait, question over here, and over here.
So on your flyer, you have this SB 880. It says revises the definition of assault weapon to be a semi-automatic centerfire rifle or a semi-automatic pistol that does not have a fixed magazine. So are they saying that they're going to classify your 1911?
No, they
or is that like an AR platform?
That's the way it started out. Right now, it's targeted only the ARs. The 880 is the Senate version of the two bullet button bills in the Assembly. So right now, it's not going to impact shotguns or handguns unless the handgun has a forward pistol grip or a barrel shroud or something that already classifies it as an assault weapon. Question over here.
If Jerry Brown vetoes the bill and Newsom's initiative passes, isn't that
then that becomes the law.
problem?
Yeah, oh yeah, we get
Conflict
it.
anymore.
Yeah, there's no conflict anymore because he vetoed legislation. There's nothing on the books. The initiative passes, it goes onto the books, and that's what we have to live life under. And we cannot change it without going back to a vote of the people to change the initiative. And
So that's worse.
yeah, that's worse. No question, it's worse.
That's what you want.
So again, we're stuck with a situation: syphilis or gonorrhea. You know, the initiative would be the bad one. Passing it by the governor would be not quite so bad or not quite so lethal.
Because at
but
least
still
you can
really
challenge
bad.
it in court.
So, you know, here's the thing: we're not going to have any influence on that decision. They're doing it all internally. Yes, sir.
Yeah, does Jerry Brown pay attention to the emails and letters that we send him, like veto this gun bill or veto that gun
Please,
bill?
away.
What he does is the governor's office has an entire unit. It's about the size of this room with people who collect all of the emails and all of the telephone calls, all the faxes, and they compile them by issue, and they give the governor a report of how many people in the public have responded on this particular issue. Every time one of these bills comes up for his consideration, signing or vetoing, he asks them, what's been the public response? They tell him, you've received 23,000 emails on this thing that are opposed to it, and you've received 1,000 that are in support. So he does get that information. He doesn't read them all. Somebody reads them all to decide whether it goes on the yes or the no side. But they do tabulate them, and he gets them for every bill that he deals with.
So it is effective?
It is.
Okay.
It is an important thing. Do not give up. That is an important thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So, yeah.
Yeah, when you call the governor's office or assemblyman or whatever, does it make any difference if you have good arguments or if you're just against it? Do they just keep track of who's for and against, or do they actually listen to the arguments?
No, they don't listen to the argument. They've either made up their decision and they're smart enough, if they're pro-gun, to say, thank you for calling, here's another chit, and we're going to talk to people about it. They want to get your name and address so they can communicate with you regularly on this issue to keep you updated. That would be the smart pro-gun candidates. How many people have pro-gun elected officials sending you letters to keep you updated on gun issues? Well, that tells you how many smart ones there are. Okay. You're building, it's a numbers game. The one time I saw that was especially effective was when Assemblyman Jones from San Diego received 23,000 emails, and he printed every one of them out. So he had stacks on his desk this tall of all of his emails and letters that he received. He asked the speaker, and this was on De Leon's SB 53, his ammunition registration bill. He asked the speaker if he could bring him on the floor as an exhibit. The speaker said, no. He said, well, can I take a picture and bring it? And he said, yeah. So he took a picture, posted it when the bill came up on top of his desk and said, folks, you need to reflect. I have received 23,187 communications in my office with regards to this bill. Has it hit the third rail in California? You bet it has. And you know what? Why you should pay attention? Because I know that every one of you folks also got 23,108 pieces of correspondence on this issue. How do I know? Because you're copied on every one of these. You need to pay attention about how important this issue is. That bill died on the floor. That was one of the few victories that we've received, because somebody was smart enough to take advantage of all the hard work that everybody has done by sending in emails, sending in letters, sending in faxes, and taking it and using it to our advantage. Yes, sir.
Related subject, we are gun owners here. And I'm also a hunter. We have this no lead ammunition thing coming through, which is really affecting me right now. First of all, there's no public areas that I can hunt on without using non-lead ammunition. And that's difficult to find. The second aspect of this, including 22 rimfires, will have to be all copper by 2019. Now, what can we do to affect the Fish and Wildlife Commission, who are making these rules now without the benefit of running through the legislature at all? They're just randomly writing these.
No, this was actually a bill sponsored by Assemblyman Nava of Santa Barbara that put the lead ammunition bill into law, and then gave till 2019 for it to be fully implemented. So it is part of the statute, which tells us that we have to change the knuckleheads over there in order to overturn that statute, because I've talked to all of our smartest and brightest attorneys, and they say that we don't, as of right now, given the body of court cases that we don't have enough of a challenge to be able to challenge that on the constitutionality of it. So we got a lot of work to do before we're able to overturn that in the state of California. That's what our best attorneys tell us. If there's any way that we think that we can, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot fewer hunters in the state of California because they can't comply with the law. That means the Department of Fish and Wildlife, I think calling it by its real name, Fish and Game, will lose tons of revenue. Wardens will be out of a job, staff people, biologists, directors will be out of a job because they no longer receive our hunting licenses, fees, and permits, and all of that stuff.
Well, you know what they're also doing? They're hiring people out of state to issue the hunting tags now. If you call on the phone to renew your license or get a tag, like I got a hold of a person in Kentucky, Jan got a hold of somebody, I don't know what state, and none of these people know how to even operate the computer.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to get mine straightened out. She still hasn't got her tags.
Yeah, just wait till you have to talk to somebody from India to issue your
Well, I know that.
Folks, listen, we've talked about a lot of stuff. Bottom line is this. We are in deep kimchi. Yogurt, poop, whatever you want to call it. We have got the stack decked heavily against us. We have a simple solution that isn't easy. And the minute that we turn around and start to fight back with other than just lobbying against these bills, that's when we're going to make a difference. The courts are our shining beacon of light. We need to make sure that we have a president who's going to appoint judges in the vein of Justice Scalia and Justice Thomas. That means that our decisions are pretty narrow as to what we need to do. I'll tell you what, if Hillary Clinton is elected president of the United States, we can kiss our Second Amendment rights away for at least 30 years. Because she will appoint 35, 45-year-old justices to the Supreme Court that'll be there for 50 or 60 years. Given the age of Supreme Court justices now. That is a very, very, very important thing that we need to consider when we cast our votes. Getting your friends involved, getting your acquaintances, getting your family members involved, helping them to do what's right for their benefit. Extremely important. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that you're my only hope. That's it. The very real thing that doesn't cost us any money, we just have to be willing to be engaged. The future can be really, really bright for us. We are on the verge of overturning the assault weapons ban, the safe handgun list, the CCW system making California shall issue, 10-day waiting periods, magazine, banning magazines, microstamping. We're on the edge of defeating all of those things, but until we have a Supreme Court that's going to uphold a right decision, we cannot send those cases to the court, because an 8-8, a 4-4 decision will kill us for decades to come. So we have asked all of the attorneys that are handling the promising cases to hold off before asking for certiorari by the Supreme Court to take on cases that need to be appealed there, until there's a resolution. In which case, we might be stuck in a situation where we're going to ask them, please don't take those cases forward. Let them apply in a bad way in that circuit court until we finally get a court that's going to rule right. Now, that might not bode well for us because we're impatient, but for the future of the country, that might be the sacrifice that we have to make in order to bring California's ship back on an even keel. So we've got some bright lights, we've got a job to do, and there's a lot of good stuff that we are already engaged in. I want to encourage you, don't be depressed. We got a great message to tell people. This government wants to take away our basic constitutional rights, and we can do something to stop it. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity and the blessing to be able to come over and chat with you guys again and bring you up to speed on what's going on in Sacramento. Actually, I've shared with you a lot of stuff that only us lobbyists know, the NRA, CRPA, Firearms Policy Coalition know about what's going on in Sacramento. But you are my trusted friends, supporters, and you need to know so that you would be encouraged that we are fighting the fight that needs to be fought. We are not a remnant who is in fear of being run over. We'll take a shot and we'll still keep fighting. And it can only happen because of what you folks are doing here at Second Amendment Council and groups like this throughout the state of California that are willing to do what it takes. So get ready to exercise your rump and get it off the cushy couch and get out and get people registered to vote. Avail yourself of the resources that are available to you. We've got newsletters back there. I've got business cards. If ever anybody has any question on gun issues, you're welcome to call me on my cell phone or text me. I might get that better, or send me an email and I will respond. If you call me, leave a message with your name and what it is that you're talking about. And Sam, you're from the Golden State Second Amendment Council, and I will return your call. Funny, the only time I ever get calls, I'm either having dinner with my grandkids or I'm in the middle of a public safety committee and you know, in the middle of testifying, my phone's going shh. And I said, well, I gotta call these people back. But please, all of the resources are there for you to be heavily engaged in the fight. Don't give up, okay? So I have everybody's commitment that you're gonna be a part of 5 Degrees to Domination, all right?
Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Paredes, warrior. Now, in the back there are some flyers from the Guns California. In the back of that thing is probably a little sleep. If you are not a member of the Guns California, please grab one of those, fill it out, become a member, because money makes things happen. They need money to run things. We don't charge dues, so please, if you're not a member of the Guns California, take advantage of it, become a member, and take care of that.